What is up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining us, as he always does, you guys know who he is by now, I would hope, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, another episode of the UNC football show. I guess football season isn't quite back yet. First game be coming on September 2nd. Fall camp just wrapped up. We're now diving into kind of South Carolina preparation now loosely. And then obviously next week, they'll really dive into the South Carolina prep very hard. But again, when the UNC football shows start returning, you know, football season is either back or very, very close to being back. And I know something that we're excited about and Carolina fans are excited about as well. So real quickly, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We'll talk about them a little bit later on in this one. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But AJ, let's start with classes starting back up. This is the first week of classes for everybody at the University of North Carolina, and that obviously includes the Carolina football players as well, with classes starting on Monday, practice Tuesday through Thursday this week. Going to be kind of a loose South Carolina preparation, like I mentioned, and then off Friday, practice again on Saturday and Sunday, and then they'll really dive into the game routine and, again, preparation for South Carolina the following week. So talk to me about this week and kind of what's going on in Chapel Hill with the Carolina football program.
Yeah, they closed camp at the end of last week, and then they had a Saturday practice in front of the students, and they displayed the new light show at Kenan Stadium. Everybody's just kind of done those lights now in the last couple of years. So Carolina hopped on board and they've got them going. Look pretty cool.
Seems pretty cool. You know, it seems pretty cool.
It was a practice just for students. So media was not allowed. I know a lot of people asked us, hey, come, there's no reports from practice. We're not allowed in there. And ethically, we couldn't sneak in there and report stuff anyway. So, and then there was a practice Sunday evening, and then classes started on Monday. So they were off for Monday. So, like you said, loose preparation for South Carolina, maybe a little bit more serious Thursday. And then they don't have practice on Friday. They go Saturday, Sunday. But I would imagine they're going to stay in the team hotel Friday night. They're going to treat it like a game night and then get up the next day and go through game routine the next day, go out and have a practice where they do all the pregame warm-up stuff and everything else, and then get into a little bit of South Carolina prep perhaps. Do some skills stuff. Sunday, I would imagine, would be some South Carolina prep as well. And then Monday is their off week during the season. So that's a game week. So they take Monday off just like they do during the season. They always practice Sunday, the day after a game, Monday off, and then they go Tuesday, which is why we get the players on Tuesdays and not Monday, because the NCAA mandates that they must have a full day off and interviews count as a day on. So we can't do interviews on Monday. So then they'll be into it. It'll be here. It's a slow month, but it's about to hit a sprint. It goes from, it's like a sloth crossing a road. Yeah. Holding up traffic and everything else, and then finally get to their side. Once we hit game week, it's going to be like a deer darting out in front and just getting to their side just like that. So, which I like. I love August. I love fall camp, but we're at that point where I'm like, guys, we got to play a game. We got to see what this is all about. I got to have something else to report on. So we'll have that soon enough. I'm
completely with you on that, Edge. I know you're a little bit more entrenched in it with, going to all the press conferences and interviews and post-game stuff post-practice stuff. But I think I'm in the same boat as I'm kind of tired of talking about it. Let's actually see what this team's made of, especially, and we'll figure that out game week one, obviously, in Charlotte, South Carolina, college game day. I mean, you talk about getting thrown into the fire. North Carolina will definitely be thrown into the fire for sure. AJ, real quickly, I just want to take a quick second before we continue this to thank our sponsor over at BetterHelp. So stay tuned for that. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices and the path forward isn't always clear. So whether it's dealing with, decisions around your career, maybe your relationship or anything else, whatever it may be, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life so you can move forward with confidence and excitement and trusting yourself to make these decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the better and easier it gets. I know for me sometimes, as somebody who uses therapy, that sometimes talking things through with someone is just incredibly helpful. And we can all get in our own heads a little bit too much sometimes. And getting out of that by getting feedback from a licensed and trained professional can bring a ton of clarity to your life. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, guys, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule, which is just so huge in my opinion, because convenience is just so big in today's world. And with BetterHelp, you can do everything online. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THI to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's betterhelp.com/THI to get 10% off your first month. Links in the description below. Back to the show. Big thank you to BetterHelp. Links in the description below. Go check them out. AJ, let's talk about Tez Walker a little bit. I know that's something that's still top of mind. Mind-boggling might be the right word to describe it. The fact that crickets from the NCAA, for the most part, I think Carolina maybe expected when they came out with that big kind of media push a couple weeks ago for maybe a decision to happen a little bit quicker. It seems like, if anything, it's just, nothing happens quickly at the NCAA, especially when it comes to decisions like this, but it hasn't resulted in a conclusion or what's going to happen, which isn't fair to Tez. It's not fair to the North Carolina football program, but we've talked about that at length, so we won't go any more into that. But yeah, the news around Tez Walker, you got to feel for the kid, man. You got to feel for the kid, and, a huge season expected out of him, preseason accolades all over the place, finally at a big time program where he wants to be, and is getting, slated to be Carolina's #1 receiver. And, we're not too far from the season. He still doesn't even know if he can suit up. So just a stupid situation all the way around. And that stupidness is directed towards the NCAA. It's just mind-boggling, really.
Everybody watching and listening to this podcast has experienced the annoyance of waiting for a review in football or like in baseball, where you see that the ball was in the glove before the foot hit the base. You see this plain as day. Or you see that the foot was on the white line and the touchdown shouldn't count. The ball should be at the 1 yard line. It's plain as day. And you wonder, why on earth is this review taking so long?
It's like the onside kick against Clemson in the ACC championship game a few years ago. It's like he wasn't nobody was offsides. What are we doing? You know what I mean?
People have to look at this similarly in that when the call on the field must be indisputable evidence, a call on the field in order to overturn the call, right? So the call on the field is Tez is ineligible. He must sit out a year. That's the call on the field. And right now the NCAA is reviewing, if you will. So reviews don't happen in a millisecond as soon as we see it on TV when we're watching a game. So we can't expect it to happen just like that, or them to succumb to public pressure just like that. They've got a new president. He cannot give the appearance that he's succumbing to public pressure, regardless of how much of a slam dunk situation it appears to be. He can't give that impression because the last guy did. The last guy was weak and feckless, and he succumbed to everything in the end, and then didn't even care. I mean, the one thing he fought, NIL coming down the path, was the thing he shouldn't have fought.
Yes.
He let everything else go, but for some reason, he didn't embrace that when he should have. And that's one of the reasons we're in the colossal, chaotic mess that we're in college sports right now. But Charlie Baker, it's sort of maybe, look, Tez Walker is the example I need to make that we are going to uphold rules. We're going to be strict. This is the way things are going to be. Sometimes there has to be a sacrificial lamb. I'm not saying that's what's ultimately going to happen. I'm saying that people need to understand it's more than just what the emotional heartstrings of the Carolina fan thinks or the sports fan in general. There's always more to it. And there's always something that a lot of people don't think about that goes into this. I'm looking at it as if, okay, the call on the field is this, but the call needs to be reversed. But that doesn't always happen.
No. Especially
in the ACC. I mean, ACC in football, how many times are you baffled that a call is not reversed?
Yeah, you're just sitting there like, how did that happen?
So I'm saying this just to let people understand that just because it appears to be, there's completely black and white situation, no gray area, should be a no-brainer, doesn't mean that it is. And doesn't mean the NCAA sees it that way. So people need to understand that. All of that said, Jacob, the program is highly confident that he's going to be cleared. He's going to be able to play. Highly confident. As far as my understanding, and we haven't talked to Mac in a bit. We haven't been over there for a few days. We're having sort of a little break where we're not going over there that much. They're very confident. That's the best I could say. They're very confident he's going to be cleared and he's going to be able to play. They are operating as if he's going to play and he'll start against South Carolina, but the clock is ticking. And each day, the closer it gets to the game, the more frustrated I think people get, the more nervous people get, more tense people get. And I would imagine that nobody is more nervous and tense about it than Tez Walker. Yeah. So Carolina's done a magnificent job publicly stating a case and getting the media on this. Andrea Adelson had a piece of, she was granted access to Tez. I wish we were granted access to Tez, but she's ESPN, so she got him, and she wrote a piece. There was a local TV in Charlotte talked to his grandmother last week. So Carolina has masterfully gotten this out into the bloodstream. And it's a no-brainer to everybody. But you know what? That call in the field that should obviously be overruled and reversed, maybe the guy in New York doesn't see it that way all the time. And in this case, it's the guy in Indianapolis or the people in Indianapolis. They have to see that as well. Mm-hmm. And until they rule it, that means they haven't seen it yet, or they haven't even looked at the case yet because they have so many cases on their hands. It would be foolish to not look at it at some point here in the next few days because it's only fair. I don't like to use the word fair because life isn't fair, but sometimes fair matters. Mm-hmm. And it's only fair to everybody involved. Get that thing dealt with. To me, it shouldn't be 10 days and stacks of paper to go through. It's a pretty cut and dry thing, especially given the fact that Kent State submitted a letter to the NCAA. That should be enough. It should also be enough that he enrolled January 9th. They changed the rule January 11th. Yeah. It should also be enough that he only wore a uniform of one school until now. Yeah. So we'll see. But keep in mind, just because it's totally obvious what has to happen doesn't mean that's going to happen. But with that, the school is very confident that this will work out in Tez's favor.
Real quickly, I want to stay on this for just one more second. The reason I want to ask you this is because I've had a few fans kind of offer this perspective to me, and I was like, that's an interesting take. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard some people say that, Carolina did such a great job of kind of coming out and being like, putting that pressure on the NCAA, making a big deal out of the narrative. But I've heard some fans say that maybe in doing that, you just pissed the NCAA off more. And they said, yeah, maybe Tez's case was on the top of the list. We just moved it to the bottom because y'all are blowing this thing out of proportion and making us look bad. No. Again, that's what I've heard from fans. Do you think there's any truth in that? Do you think that has any merit?
No, Greg Sankey had a little bit of that. Yeah. Greg Sankey had a little bit of that when they were finalizing the IFAM stuff, right? The previous series of issues. That's not going to happen here. I think what it is, what I said earlier, there's a new sheriff in town, right?
Trying to stamp his authority, kind of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. By the way, when I say that, I have the image of Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours. There's a new sheriff in town. His name is Reggie Hammond. Right on. That's such a great scene. But there's a new sheriff in town. His name is Charlie Baker. And the last thing he needs to do is have a sign of weakness from an organization that has been incredibly weak. Yeah. So public pressure, if he succumbs to public pressure, what's next?
Yeah.
What's the next school that's gonna reach for the heartstrings and go to the box of tissues and try to sway the NCAA that way? Precedent matters. And this is a guy who was a governor, so he understands about the give and take, which I think is a positive, which is all situations are isolated, in my opinion, should all be treated that way instead of just the blanket, hey, this is the rule, which is why if they don't rule in his favor, this would be baffling because that means that they didn't look at the actual details.
Yeah.
It's just, well, here's what it is, and that's that. So, but he can't appear that he's succumbing to public pressure. That's the bottom line. I think people need to understand that. People complain about the NCAA, and they still are saying this is the same NCAA as it was under Emmert. Well, maybe this guy is going to use these early cases to make it very clear, to send a message. We are not different now. We got new leadership. This is a new ball game. It's like you get a new, if you're a sports fan of a pro team, you get a new general manager, they're going to tear it down and build it back up. Well, they're doing that right now. They got a new GM. The GM is going to change the way they play, hire a new coach, bring in a new system, all new players, all that kind of stuff, rebuild the farm system, whatever it is. That's what's going on here. So it's not as obvious, perhaps, to the people in the NCAA in Indianapolis as it is to everybody watching this and listening to this, including you and me.
Yeah. Knowing the NCAA, he'll be cleared at 6:59 p.m. on September 2nd, and that'll just be very typical of them. But that's enough of this. We'll talk. We'll hopefully the next time we're talking about this, it's because Tez has been cleared, and it's with before, way before the opening game against South Carolina. Moving it on, AJ, injuries. No availability. Well, there was slated to be no availability this week, as we've talked about before we came on camera. That has changed media availability wise, as they're going to have a few position coaches available on Thursday. And our very Trey will be there as well, covering that as AJ's headed up to DC for a couple of days. Enjoy that trip, AJ. But injuries.
Your work trip.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know you're not taking a break this time of year. I know that doesn't happen very often with you, but talking a little bit about the injuries, because we haven't talked to any coaches before this podcast has been recorded this week, or any players or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's still some question marks. Boykins being, DeAndre Boykins being one, Will Hardy being one. I think the defense is those two guys on defense are probably the ones that everybody's curious about the most, because especially a guy like Boykins kind of integral to what Carolina wants to do defensively. You don't, no disrespect to DJ Jones, but you don't really want to have DJ Jones starting as your star against South Carolina on September 2nd, a guy that's never played the position before. You want to have someone like Boykins, who in my opinion is one of, if not Carolina's, besides a guy like Cedric Gray, one of Carolina's best defensive players last year, and certainly one of their harder hitting ones. And Hardy as well. I think we saw him grow into that secondary. And I think what he brings not only on the field in terms of talent, but I think he's a leader and he's a vocal guy back there, even for a young guy like he is, a coach's son as well. And you want that kind of intelligence and knowledge and leadership back there in the secondary. It's so integral. So obviously some other guys I'm missing as well, but talk to me a little bit about kind of the injuries situation. Cause again, we haven't really had any news since the last time that you talked to Mac and the other, players and coaches, last week.
Well, getting Stick Lane back would be huge, because he could play safety,
not to mention him as well,
and star. So he'd be safety and a star. And DeAndre can handle snaps. He played 900 something snaps.
He played so much last year.
He could handle the workload. Although coming off an injury, how much workload would he be able to handle if he's 80%, 90%? If he's 100%, he's fine. He'll go out there and play a ton. He'll be as good in the fourth quarter as he is in the first quarter. Although conditioning might be a little bit of an issue, given the fact that he'd be coming off an injury. But they need another guy. And I agree with you about DJ Jones. It's a great story. And he might be able to help him at some point. He might be forced to try to help him sooner rather than later. But we don't know right now. So I can't say specifically, because we haven't been over there. We were supposed to, originally on the schedule, we had Mac this week and players, Mac Wednesday, players Thursday. And we get Mac again next Monday for the weekly presser. And kind of a decision was made that made a lot of sense, that it would just be highly redundant. There's no point in bringing him out there. And it's good for us too, because I don't want to constantly report the same thing. So other than some of the injury updates, there really wasn't a whole lot of information we were going to be able to get. And we can save it all for Monday. It'll give us a lot next week. And the players, I think they just want to give the players a break, let them take a week. Classes starting. They had move-in day at the end of last week, over the weekend. There's a lot of stuff they need to get adjusted to. They don't need to pull them out and talk to us, especially like on a Thursday. A lot of guys have classes at a certain time. So there would only be a couple of dudes available anyway. That's why we get the players on Tuesday evenings during the season, by the way, because they're not in classes. So doing it Tuesday morning would have been too much of a challenge, because the guys, they practice in the morning and then they go right into classes, and they're usually done with their day like around 2 or 3. They can come over and get treatment, then get some more work in, do a lot of film study, that kind of thing. So, anyway, so that's why we're not getting them. So we don't know all about the injury stuff right now, but I think Boykins is the most important guy to get back. I would say Stick Lane is second, simply because he can play safety and star. Hardy third. And I don't think that means anything less about Hardy. It's just they've got safeties.
Mm-hmm.
They've got guys, even if Lane can't play, they've got Gio Biggers. They've got Don Chapman over there. They got Derek Allen. They've got guys there that can play. But star is a different situation. There's Boykins and there's everybody else.
Yeah.
And although Lane can play that, Lane's an experienced guy. He was all Sun Belt at Georgia State. He's a good player. Forced turnover against Carolina last year, so they'd probably be okay with him there. But that is the most important. Those are the most important guys that are out with injuries that have a chance to get back and play.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. Should know more next Monday, like you mentioned, for Mac Brown's press conference, and that being kind of the game week as well. Should kind of know what their status may be going into Charlotte that weekend. So again, stay tuned for that, and hopefully we'll know more about that early next week. Last two things I want to talk about, AJ, kind of the vibe surrounding the fans and vibe surrounding the team, two different things, but things that kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways. For me, the fans vibe is I think the interest levels, and we talk about this, the interest levels this offseason just, they weren't there as much. I think as we talk about, once fall camp kind of comes around, you get into the thick and the grind of fall camp, interest levels start going up, and interest in the team and excitement around the team always naturally goes up, especially from the diehard Carolina fans that have been doing this and watching and following this team for a very long time. But I think as a caveat to that, I think the interest levels have gone up. I think people are looking forward to the season starting, but I do think there's this sense from the fans of, well, I kind of like what I'm hearing, but I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing. And I think that has a lot more to do with the defense than the offense. And because the defense has just been a theme and a group that has just struggled to really take that next step for years now. So that's what I'm sensing from the fans, and having talked to fans and interacting with on Twitter and our boards as well. What kind of vibe do you agree with that? And if not, what kind of vibe are you kind of getting from the fan base right now?
Yeah, it's defense, it's offensive line, it's the NCAA with Tez, it's the running backs. No one's going to stand out, or they're going to screw up and not play Petaway, and he's going to transfer and all that kind of stuff. I think that, again, this goes back to being rewarded. We've talked about this so many times. Yeah. Carolina basketball fans right now are incredibly optimistic, even though the ones that dumped on Hubert over and over and over again are still optimistic because the program has rewarded them so much over time. Football hasn't done that. So there tends to be more pessimism. Like, optimism often breaks through before basketball season starts, no matter what, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter how good the
14-19. Mm-hmm. Even before the 14-19 year, people thought, man, this could be maybe an Elite 18, right? In football, they could look like they could have the potential to go 12-0, and win the ACC, make the CFP, and people are thinking, well, how are they going to let us down? How are they going to go 6-6? That kind of thing. It's because of history. History determines that. And the only way to change that is to change new history, the history that's created moving forward. So, yeah, I get that vibe. I think fans, seeing is believing with the defense, seeing is believing with the offensive line, and seeing to them is believing with Mac Brown. I tend to think Mac's done a better job than a lot of fans do, because they forget what this thing was 4 years ago. I remember, because I was there every day. You were there a lot, that, Larry's last year too. And again, not to disparage Larry, but the program spiraled in the wrong direction fast. It got out of control fast. And Mac had a lot of work to do cleaning the thing up. And let's face it, when Mac took over, they had one season in which they had won more than 8 games in all since he had left. And now they have the 9-game season. They have the Orange Bowl in a different season. They have a second-year quarterback starting in the NFL now. They could have the first pick next year. There's a lot of things adding up. Cedric Gray could be a first-round pick, projecting down the road. Travis Shaw. You can look at some other guys that are potential high draft picks, someone like a Bryson Nesbitt. He's in the program. That would get the program some steam and get people feeling a little bit more optimistic about the direction things are going. And, hey, there's a lot here to chew on with this team. Right now, people aren't really focused too much about how great Drake is, or how deep the wide receiver room is, or how how fantastic a tandem Cedric and Power are, or how much better they're going to be covering at corner, or the depth at safety, or how deep that running back room is, or the fact that they may have the best tight ends room in college football, or the fact that they have Clyde Christensen, who's dealt with his coach, was coaching Tom Brady this time a year ago. He's coached Peyton Manning. He's coached Andrew Luck. He's in there advising. Ted Monachino on the other side is advising. He's coached a bunch of NFL All-Pro Russians. And that and a guy who was a head coach in the NFL 4 years ago is the tight ends coach now. So many positive things are occurring in this program. And there's so many positive things about the group that's going to go to Charlotte next week. A lot of fans just don't see it. They got to see the result. And I get that. I totally understand. It's a results-oriented business. The coaches treat the players. Mac treats his assistant coaches that way. Your group needs to produce. He coaches the assistants. And they have to tell their kids in their room, this is results-oriented business. You must perform in order to stay on the field or to get on the field. Well, the same thing goes for the program in general. People want results. I think they've gotten pretty good results. But the Orange Bowl year and the 9-win year last year don't stand out to most fans. It's what the hell happened with 6 and 7 in the last 4 games of last year. That's what people chew on because that's what their history dictates they must think about more than anything else because it happens all the time. Yeah. Every time North Carolina gets close to bumping its head on the ceiling, it derails.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've talked about it ad nauseum, and I'm not going to repeat myself too much again, but 9-1 to 9-5 was the perfect storm for pessimism this year, and it wasn't just because they lost 4 straight, AJ. It was how they lost it. Josh Downs dropping a touchdown in the end zone. He catches that every other time, but he drops it in that game. Then they go lose to State in the fashion they lost that one. Can't do that at home. And then you go to ACC championship game, you get ran out of they put their backup quarterback in who's better than any backup quarterback Carolina's faced and will start for them this year. And he torches them and they not even a game. And then you go and you're in it against Oregon, AJ. You're almost there. You can win that game and you give up that late drive on defense, just like it's happened so many times in the past. It was the perfect recipe and the perfect storm for pessimism. It was. And I'm not surprised we're here right now. Again, I think some of that pessimism has been lifted. I think some of it's turned into optimism. But I think a lot of fans are like,
I think it's
I'll
hope.
Believe it when I see it. Yeah, it's hope too. Hopes. Yeah,
I think it's hope more than optimism.
It's like, I hope this team is as good as they maybe could be. It's kind of how it feels.
I think we have a chance to be pretty good, but I don't know if we're going to be. Yeah. Optimism would be, I think that this is a good team.
Yeah.
I don't get a lot of that. It's the hope, and there are a lot of nice parts there, but I'm not overly confident all those parts are going to sync together.
And you can understand that. I mean, the defensive line, we expect it to be better, but there's no proof that it will be yet. The O-line's still having consistency issues. I've been talking about that. Like, it seems like since Mac Brown got back, you've got injuries in the secondary. Once again, that feels like that happens every year. You got your best wide receiver. Nobody knows if he's going to play or not. That kind of comes out of nowhere for no reason. Mm-hmm. There's things that have gone on that have led to people being pessimistic, but I do think, again, I think there is hope from a lot of fans that this team can be good. And when you got a guy like Drake May leading the way, then you've got a chance at being pretty dang good. But again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens, and we will be not too far away. Last thing, vibe from the team. What are you sensing from them as someone who's just been, around the team a lot over the past month? It's
polar opposite than the fans, which is a good thing. You don't want the team to be pessimistic.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
Cautiously up. They are raring to go. Mm-hmm. They have a giant chip. I think in a weird kind of way, losing 4 in a row last year is good for the 2023 Tar Heels in that it gave them a massive chip. They accomplished a lot a year ago, and they went into this whole offseason pissed off. They realized that they were in control of doing something special, and they let it slip away. Missing field goals from a guy that was really good prior to those missed field goals. Their most reliable playmaker on offense drops a touchdown pass, and they lose that game. A defense that improved still gave up that drive. They could have made stops, and really they were out physicaled by Oregon. They talk about the violence and physicality and the soft narrative. I mean, that opened the door for Mac to talk about the soft narrative. And that's what he said, soft narrative. And he didn't dispute it. He didn't fight against it. He said, it's our job to change it. So they went into this offseason with a lot of steam to blow off as far as things that really ticked them off. And they saw how close they could be. And yet recognize that it is totally on them. This wasn't an issue of they don't have enough Jimmys and Joes. This wasn't an issue where they're just too thin in certain areas. They simply can't compete. Wasn't that at all. When Matt said a couple of weeks ago that the night before, Gene Chizik was talking to the team. They had a meeting, and he said, look, there are 130 programs out there right now, teams out there right now, where the coaches are telling them you guys can win a championship of some kind. He said, most of them aren't being honest with their team. Very few teams right now can actually win championships of some kind this season. He said, we can. We can. He believes they have the right fuel. He believes they have the personnel. He believes they have the star power. He believes they have the coaching staff. He believes they have the motivation, which is part of the right fuel, but it's motivation to win games and fuel to get better, motivation to get better. Because there's a lot of guys on this roster. I was thinking about it when I was getting my steps this morning. There's a lot of guys on this roster that could be drafted in the NFL next spring. A lot of them. So if you want to be that guy, you got a lot on the line too. So there's a lot that can be attained here in the next several months with this football program. They know it, but they know it not in the way that the team 2 years ago did. The team 2 years ago was just kind of strutting around like, yeah, you know, we're all right. We're just fine. And they were trying to replace a bunch of lost skill guys and all that. This team didn't lose those skill guys. The ones they did lose, they replaced immediately at wide receiver. They're an older team. There's a lot of leadership on this team. So they are really confident. Optimistic, yeah. I don't even think optimism is a word over there, to be honest with you. They're just confident. They think they're good. They know they should be good, and expectations are very high, but they're not out of whack with it. I think that they have proportioned the way that they look at what they can achieve this season in a very healthy way. So I think this team's in really good shape. They're in a good position to do some really positive things. So the fans are terrified or just think, we're North Carolina, we're going to stink. The guys in that room, man, they're so disconnected from that way of thinking, it's not even funny. And that's probably the way you want it.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is exactly how you want it going into the year. Because if the roles were reversed and the team was like, I don't know what to expect, and the fans were like, oh, we're gonna be fantastic. I mean, that's not what you want. You'd rather it be the other way around. So, again, season's not too far away. We'll know before too long how good this team is and how good this team can be. Because we've talked about it ad nauseum, AJ. They don't have a lot of gimme games in that first four. Let's put it that way. They're thrown into the fire. And if they are a good team, we will know. And if they're a team that's not ready yet, then we will know after those 4 games exactly where they're at. So again, looking forward to the season starting. I know we're excited about it. And fans, for the most part, are excited about it. I guess some are a little bit nervous. Some are a little bit scared about, what might happen on September 2nd. But I'll leave this for the fans. It's football. It's a sport. It's supposed to be enjoyable. Enjoy the season. Enjoy following this team, support this team, and who knows what might happen, again, especially with some of the talent they have on both sides of the ball and some of the talent they have in that coaching staff room as well. And I think, AJ, that's a good place to wrap this one up. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Check them out, betterhelp.com/THI. Get 10% off your first month. Link is in the description below. So a big thank you to them for sponsoring this one. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another edition of the UNC Football Show. Let's do this. If you're excited about the season starting, I don't care if you're pessimistic or optimistic. If you're just excited about watching some college football again, go ahead and like this video below. Make sure you share, subscribe, hit the notification bell as well. See you on the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.